All right, so I guess this is take two. Dior's here. So I've been getting quite a bit of questions, um, pretty much over the last few months, over some old videos I did about making paper shotgun shells. Um, and actually, this is mostly for one particular user, and I think this is kind of a sort of a semi-prolific question. Do these paper shotgun shells catch fire? And this question was actually asked by a user by the name of Wess 004. Wess spelled with two S's, not one, so not to be confused with Wes S. Okay, Wess 004 asked me the question: do these paper shells actually, do these paper shells catch fire? And to real quick answer your question, Wes, short answer is no, they don't catch fire. Okay. And I'm going to discuss some of the reasons why they don't and why these shells operate the way they do. Okay. So, traditionally speaking, uh, paper shotgun shells, in fact, paper cartridges and any sort of repeating firearm, is not a new thing. It hasn't been a new thing. Paper cartridges actually existed long since before brass cartridges did, and paper shotgun shell holes are no different. They've existed, paper shotgun shell holes have existed long before all brass shotgun shell holes, and certainly long before uh, plastic, shotgun shell holes were ever introduced. And yeah, plastic shotgun shell holes were introduced. They, like I said, they're not a new thing either, but they were introduced sometime back in the early 1960s. So they've been around for about 50, almost 60 years now. But paper shotgun shell holes have been around for well over 100 years. So they've been tested, they've been proven, they work. Okay, just plastic is a little bit more reliable and it's easier to reload. And I guess apparently it's cheaper for the manufacturers. So you're really hard pressed to find paper shotgun shells nowadays. It's not say they're not impossible to find, because actually right here, believe it or not, I've got a whole box of Federal brand paper shotgun shells that were manufactured actually pretty recently, or actually manufactured this year. These are limited production run shells. These are really difficult to get a hold of. They're not impossible to find, but you basically have to go through the manufacturer and get them. I actually had to order these directly off of Federal's website. And these were not cheap. This is the $14 a box, plus shipping and handling. Very expensive for number 8 birdshot, okay, to say the least. Um, so after, like I said, I made 3 videos. Okay, the first 2 videos were showing off some of the shells, the paper shells I made. The second video was more, I kind of got a little bit more in depth of how, the construction process of what I did to make them. And then the third video was me test firing them. Okay, if you ever get around to watching, in fact, I will put a link to all 3 of the videos in the description. Okay, but in the third video, I did test fire them, and they shot. Really didn't have hardly any issues. I mean, I did have a couple of them that jammed up, but I will explain to you the reasons why I was having said issues. Okay, they didn't jam up from, when I was loading them. They jammed up after they were fired. Okay, and I'm, like I said, just gonna discuss to you some of the basic design principles to why shotgun shells are made the way they are. Okay, now here's some shotgun shells. Okay, these are, with the exception of this one right here, all of these are plastic hull shotgun shells. Now you see on the ends here, they got these brass base caps. They're all different heights and everything. Traditionally speaking, your heavier pressure loads would, traditionally speaking, have a higher brass cap. Okay, your higher pressure loads being typically that of buckshot or slugs. Okay. I've got, it's going to be difficult to do here. I got one slug right here. This is a hollow point, 1 ounce hollow point slug made by Winchester, the low recoil load. This right here is a 9-piece double-aught buckshot made by Federal. Okay. Now this is kind of interesting. This is also 9-piece double-aught buckshot. This is also high-pressure load, but this is made by Fiocchi. Okay, this is actually factory right here. This isn't something I reloaded. Okay. This is one of those paper shells that Federal made, okay, that you can buy by the box. A little bit higher brass. And then this is a common, super common low brass number 8 birdshot load. You know, your game loads, you know, your lower pressure loads, they're typically going to have a lower brass cap on the hole. Okay, more, like I said, really not so much an issue today with plastic shells as it is with the paper shells from yesteryear. The point of having a high brass cap on a paper shell versus having a low brass cap, basically this allows you to put a little bit more powdered charge. Now, make no mistake, the brass itself is actually not holding back any sort of major pressure from the shell, you know, that's, you know, being exerted from the shell when it's being fired off. That's actually, believe it or not, all pressures are actually being done right here in this section of the barrel on the shotgun, which is known as the firing chamber. This section right here behind the bolt right here, just forward of the forcing cone on the shotgun. This section right here, that's where the shell sits, you know. The pressure is actually being contained within that firing chamber of the shotgun barrel, okay? That's how it works. This really doesn't do anything. This is just, these traditionally are to keep the powder from burning through the paper hole, okay? And yes, you heard me say that these don't catch fire. What I'm saying, they don't catch fire. What happens is the powder, when it sets off, especially on a paper shell, and you don't have that high brass, it'll actually burn. It'll actually burn the paper around the bottom edge of this shell. And if it, like I said, if say somebody put too much powdered charge way above this whole top half of the shell will completely burn off, and it'll actually get shot out the end of your muzzle of your shotgun. So essentially, you end up inadvertently turning your shotgun shell into a cut shell. If you don't know what those are, go ahead and stop the video right now and type that in your Google search, and you'll find out that a cut shell is a completely different animal. You don't want this to inadvertently turn itself into a cut shell, especially if you're firing this out of a repeating arm style shotgun like a pump shotgun or a lever action shotgun, because this brass right here by itself will actually not be able to eject out of the breech of the shotgun, and will not be able to successfully be able to eject. It'll actually get stuck, it'll jam, and it'll cause a double feed. And that was actually the issue that I had with a few of the shells that I test fired. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get that on video. For some reason, the file got lost on my phone. I actually do have a clip on my phone that I did find that lost clip on my phone. I might see about including that in the end of this video of my my cameraman, Connor, shooting some of these off, and that's where he was having issues. So that's why you have a high brass. So this brass is basically the limitation of how much powdered charge you can actually put inside the shell without running the risk of burning, your paper hull completely off. So that's why traditionally paper shells had a higher hull. Now, I know this is a birdshot shell, but they probably got a little bit more powdered charge in here. Oops, than a regular plastic one. I think mostly because they want to ensure that this shot's going to go where it needs to go. This is supposed to be this is more of a competition shell for sporting clays, and they just also want to ensure that they're not going to put too much powdered charge. It'll go above this brass cap and burn this hull off. And like I said, again, it'll cause reliability issues, especially if it's a repeating style arm. Okay. Now over here on the far side, we've got a 12 gauge flare gun. Okay. And I got some 12 gauge flares right here. As you see, this is one that I cut down. I actually cut it down, but actually you can get to see, with it being cut down, you actually get to see what it looks like on the inside here. Here's one that's full length. The reason why I cut this down, so that way I can actually chamber it inside the shotgun, because if I've got all this right here, this won't actually properly chamber. It's actually, that's actually bigger than the actual opening on that chamber. So, but even so, these are 100% all plastic, okay? And like I said, to be honest with you, to have the fear that these will catch fire, you know, these paper shells catching fire as you're shooting them off, it's about as irrational of having the same fear of having these plastic shells melt and or catch fire inside the barrel of your shotgun. You'd have to like be seriously shooting off an ungodly amount of shotgun shells in order for that to happen. Okay? So, just to be clear here, okay? And like I said, these, yeah, this tube right here in this section of the flare, it actually acts as the barrel. And I'll actually show you what I mean by the flare gun here. So right here, I've already got a flare in here in this flare gun. You can see, no way, shape, or form does that flare actually make contact with the barrel of the flare gun. Now, these are the last shells from that homemade paper batch, okay? I fired all of them off. These are it. I don't have any more. This is the last unfired 9-piece double-aught buckshot that I have. I've got a nice roll crimp on there, and I've got, I want to say, either 1 or 2 plastic overshot cards with a piece of cardboard overshot card on top to give it kind of a semi-traditional look. This has got a single piece shot cup wad and gas seal, so it's not 100% traditional in that aspect. Traditional shell, it would have like either a paper cup or wouldn't have a cup at all, and usually some sort of cardboard or cork or paper, like a stacked wax paper filler in here. And yeah, that would actually act as the gas wad, or I mean gas seal. So, and this is one of the shells. This is actually the last of the virgin paper shotgun shells that I haven't reloaded or fired off. So this is a virgin shell, not been used. I could easily go back later on and go ahead and primer this up, load it up with some shot and you know, some powder and shot, just like this one. But I'm just going to leave it because I figure it's kind of a nice decoration piece, you know. And just like this one, I'm not going to be firing it off. Just going to hang on to it. So here's one of them Federal factory made shells. These, I guarantee you, are designed to be reloaded. So one of the issues I had pretty much with all my paper shells, other than some of them actually having severe burn marks where it actually burned the top of the shell completely off, A lot of them actually just kind of cracked down the side, split down the side like this one did. That's why I can't reload it. But that's because this is made out of layered newspaper. Okay, this is probably about I want to say 4 layers of newspaper. I cut them up in strips, and just kind of crisscross them in layers. You guys see them a little bit, crisscross them. This is like a single continuous strip of paper that was very carefully rolled on by machine. And actually, there's the seam right there. So like I said, this is a super stiff paper. This I can reload. Guarantee you, like if I shoot this off and I try to reload it, I'll be able to reload it. This 50-50 chance that I might not. Actually, I would say probably closer to a 90 to 10%. I'd say 10% chance I might be able to reload this, 90% chance I won't. So yeah. And unfortunately, I don't have any all brass shotgun shells for examples on the table. For one reason, for a couple of reasons. One, they're almost impossible to get a hold of, and two, if you do get a hold of them, they're extremely expensive especially if they're already loaded. And three, they're extremely difficult to reload if you don't have the proper shot shell presses, which I don't think my Lee Load All 2 shot shell press would be able to reload one of those, safely reload one of those brass shotgun shells. So I just don't have them. Those brass shotgun shells came about during World War I, during the trench warfare, when trench pump shotguns like the Model 1897 and the Model 1912 came about. They had issues because, there was trenches, the rainfall, the trenches were heavily laden with water and water intrusion. And like I said, water intrusion on ammo was not, uncommon. One of the problems that you'll have with paper shells, if they get even just a little bit wet, they swell up. And if they swell up, you're done. Game over. You can't use that shell for anything because it won't chamber into your shotgun. So that's when they started making brass shells. The reason why, like I said, manufacturers nowadays make shells pretty much almost exclusively out of plastic with a brass cap, because it's I think mostly it has something to do with it being cheap. But on top of that, plastic is a hell of a lot more forgiving. It's easier to reload. Okay, it's easier to load. It's easier to reload. Again, you don't actually have to put a high brass cap on a plastic shell anymore. And actually, you can actually see some of the powder is starting to come up above that brass cap there. But it's because plastic, it doesn't melt much like the same fat, like I said, much in the same way that paper holes will burn. The other reason why these things won't catch fire when you're shooting them, for one, when you do actually shoot the shot, just to kind of go over some basic physics here, okay? Once that shot actually goes off and leaves the barrel, it's actually creating a vacuum, You got to remember, fire needs 3 things in order to exist. It needs sustained heat, it needs fuel, and it needs oxygen. Well, when you're creating a vacuum in there, you're taking away any potential oxygen that it's going to have. So, again, having a fire in your shotgun going to be extremely unlikely, like super unlikely. We're talking like Mythbusters would have to be abusing a whole bunch of shotguns to attempt to even get one of these shells to catch fire. Okay, even a plastic shell, you'd actually be more at risk of a plastic shell melting than you would be of actually catching fire. Anyhow, I believe I've beaten this dead horse with another dead horse. I'm Diorce. I'm out. You guys have yourselves a good one. Bye-bye. What's that?
Did you see where that one went?
Oh, you eject it?
Yeah.
Everyone ready, man. I'm surprised. I would have thought that would have had a little bit more of a boom. There we go.
That one broke inside.
Oh, dang. Oh!
Right?
Dang, alright.
That's some crazy shit.
Yeah, that is. Well, we'll have to